What's going on, guys? This is DaWoblefet, and welcome to Mechanics Monday, a series where I pick a mechanic to analyze each week that may be underexplored or unknown to players in the VGC community. With the VGC 2019 season starting up, players are looking to get ready for upcoming tournaments by practicing and getting accustomed to the new metagame and Pokemon that VGC 19 offers. With these new restricted Pokemon comes a whole host of new mechanics from Generation 7, mixed in with old mechanics from VGC 2016. And today, we'll be looking at 19 mechanics that could come up in your games of this VGC season. I should note that I am considering the VGC 19 season as a whole in this video, so I will be talking about things like Primals and Ultra Necrozma, so even if you won't see some of these interactions in the Sun or Moon series, you will see these come up in the Ultra series down the road. Number 1. Sunsteel Strike, Moongeist Beam, and Photon Geyser all have Mold Breaker properties attached to the moves. This means Sunsteel Strike on Duskmane Necrozma will work just like Duskmane had the Mold Breaker ability, letting it Oko Mimikyu through the skies here, for example. In a similar way, Lunala's Moongeist Beam doesn't get slowed down by Lugia's Multiscale, breaking right through it. Other notable abilities that these moves can break through include Sturdy, Wonder Guard on Shedinja, or the damage weakening effect of Clefairy's Friend Guard on its allies. This same Mold Breaker effect applies to the exclusive Z-move variants of all three attacks, so Searing Sunray Smash, Menacing Moonray's Maelstrom, and Light That Burns the Sky all ignore abilities too. Number 2. Full Metal Body, Shadow Shield, and Prism Armor all have the property of being immune to Mold Breaker effects. For example, if Kyurem White attacks Duskmane Necrozma with Fusion Flare here, Prism Armor's damage reduction effect still applies despite Kyurem White's Turbo Blaze, as you can see from the damage calculation on your screen. Another very relevant example of this is that Moongeist Beam will not break through an opposing Lunala's Shadow Shield. Again, as you can see, Lunala should always be fainting if Shadow Shield wasn't kicking in, but it survived the Moongeist Beam here just fine, so Shadow Shield was active. You can sort of think of it like a three-tiered interaction. At the bottom are normal abilities, which include stuff like Sturdy or Friend Guard. Above that are things with a Mold Breaker effect, like Terravolt, Moongeist Beam, or Photon Geyser. These moves and abilities in Tier 2 will beat the regular abilities in Tier 1. However, in Tier 3 are the three abilities of the Alolan Legendary Pokemon, which ignore the moves and abilities in Tier 2. To give an example of how this works with Full Metal Body, take a look at this opposing Kyurem White with Turbo Blaze. Metagross here has Clear Body, but despite Clear Body, Icy Wind drops the speed of Metagross. However, Solgaleo did not receive the drop in speed, and that's because Full Metal Body doesn't care about Mold Breaker effects like Turbo Blaze. Number 3. Necrozma's signature move, Photon Geyser, can be either a physical or special attack, depending if Necrozma's attack or special attack is higher. This is determined by whichever of the actual stats on Necrozma is higher, though if there's a tie in attack and special attack, Photon Geyser defaults to being special. For example, on this Duskmane Necrozma, it has 229 attack and 133 special attack, which means Photon Geyser is a 100 base power physical move. Photon Geyser isn't like Psyshock, where it always hits on the special side or something though. This Duskmane's Photon Geyser is a physical attack, and it is attacking the opponent's physical defense. Likewise, a Necrozma with a higher special attack stat will be attacking with a 100 base power special move into the opponent's special defense. Notably, whether or not Photon Geyser is physical or special can also depend on any boosts or drops you have, say from Calm Mind or Intimidate. For example, suppose my Duskmane Necrozma gets intimidated twice. Because it is at -2, Necrozma's attack stat is multiplied by 0.5, and if there's a decimal, it gets rounded down. 229 times 0.5 is 114.5, which rounded down is 114. This means my Necrozma would actually be using a special Photon Geyser in this case, with 133 special attack. As a result of this, it's now pretty important to make sure you have 31 special attack IVs on physical attacking Necrozma, since Intimidate is certainly a relevant thing to consider. This works the other way around too. If an Ultra Necrozma has its special attack lowered in some way, then its Photon Geyser is probably going to be based on a physical attack. Ultra Necrozma can use up to 5 attack IVs and still take the same amount of damage from foul play, so that might be something to consider in case, for example, Duskmane Necrozma takes a Moonblast special attack drop against Xerneas before undergoing Ultra Burst. Boosts and drops are the only things that affect Photon Geyser's choice to be physical or special, however. Things like Choice Band, the effect of a burn, or skill swapping huge power to Necrozma do not impact whether or not Photon Geyser is physical or special. It's just the -6 to +6 boosts and drops. That means if a physical Necrozma is burned and uses Photon Geyser, even if its special attack would be higher, it uses a burned attack stat with a physical Photon Geyser to do its damage calculations. You can see this demonstrated here with the damage calculations I have on the screen for Duskmane's Photon Geyser against 252 HP Groudon. Everything I've just said for Photon Geyser applies to light that burns the sky as well, which inherits all of the properties of Photon Geyser. Number 4. Z Photon Geyser and Z Psystrike are always special Z moves. As I just explained, regular Photon Geyser can be a physical or special move depending on which attack stat is higher, but Z Photon Geyser will always be a special attack no matter what. While I don't imagine you'll see Z Photon Geyser all that much in VGC 19, Z Psystrike behaves exactly the same way. The Z move hits on the special side rather than the physical side. This is really helpful for Mewtwo, allowing it to threaten a knockout on Primal Groudon much more reliably than if Z Psystrike hit on the physical side initially. As you can see from the damage calculation on the screen, this knockout would not be possible unless Z Psystrike was attacking Groudon on the special side. Number 5. Ultra Bursting requires the Ultra Necrozium Z and behaves similarly to Mega Evolution, but the two are still distinct. You can Ultra Burst and Mega Evolve with another Pokemon on the same turn, and you can also Ultra Burst and use a Z move on the same turn with a different Pokemon. You cannot use Light that burns the sky until after Necrozma has undergone Ultra Burst though. And of course, if you use your Z move with another Pokemon, you'll lose access to Light that burns the sky, because you only get one Z move per battle. Importantly, Ultra Bursting is still similar enough to Mega Evolution that Ultra Bursting falls within the same speed bracket as Mega Evolution does. Here's an example of what I mean. When two Pokemon Mega Evolve on the same turn, you can determine which of the Pokemon is faster in their base forms by whichever one Mega Evolves first. This can sometimes be useful in determining a range of speeds the opponent has to follow. For example, if your Manectric is max speed and Mega Evolves before some opposing Gengar, you know that the opposing Gengar can at most only have 172 speed stat, which is 212 speed EV's Timid Nature. It could be slower, but you know that it's at most that speed stat for sure, so it can't be max speed. In a similar way, suppose my bulky Kangaskhan with 130 speed stat Mega Evolves after the opposing Necrozma Ultra Bursts into Ultra Necrozma. What do I instantly know about this Necrozma? Well, to Ultra Burst first, in the worst case scenario, it was a speed tie with Kangaskhan, which means Necrozma must have had at least a 130 speed stat. At most, Necrozma with a neutral speed nature and 252 speed EVs only reaches a 129 stat, which means you instantly know the opposing Ultra Necrozma has a speed boosting nature, like Timid or Jolly. Of course, just like Mega Evolution, Ultra Necrozma has access to its boosted speed immediately, so it's not like Kangaskhan will actually be moving first when the two attack, but you can use this trick to quickly determine the relative speed of an opposing Necrozma, which can help your game plan. Number 6. Fairy and Dark Aura apply for every Pokemon in the field, but they only apply once for each Pokemon in the field. This means, for example, Tapu Koko gets access to a boosted Dazzling Gleam if a Xerneas is out on the field. However, if you have a Xerneas and the opponent has a Xerneas, you don't get two Fairy Auras stacked on top of each other. Instead, you just have one Fairy Aura boost available to you. Otherwise, the Xerneas versus Xerneas mirror would be crazy. You'd be able to potentially 1-hit KO opposing Primal Groudon with +2 Moonblast if you could have two Fairy Aura boosts, which is pretty insane. So I'm personally glad it only applies one time. Number 7. Geomancy cannot be taken by Snatch. If your Incineroar attempts to get cheeky and try to steal away the boost from Xerneas, it just won't work. Z Geomancy is a move that can be more easily disrupted, however. When Xerneas uses Z Geomancy, it gains a +1 boost in all of its stats on the first turn, then gains the normal +2 boost in special attack, special defense, and speed on the following turn once Geomancy completes. Xerneas is very vulnerable on the second turn, however. For example, you could use Fake Out on the second turn to deny Xerneas its boost, or use Taunt to deny the second turn of Geomancy. Although you can Z-move through Taunt for the first turn of Geomancy, on the second turn you won't have any such luck breaking through, and Taunt will prevent the extra boost from going off. Number 8. Zygarde's Power Construct allows it to transform from Zygarde 10% or Zygarde 50% into Zygarde Complete, which gives it a whopping 216 base HP stat. However, to transform into Zygarde Complete, Zygarde must be at or below 50% of its HP at the end of the turn. This means if something like a Leftovers or a Super Citrus Berry pushes it back above 50% before the end of the turn, Zygarde won't transform into Zygarde Complete. For the purposes of VGC games, after Zygarde transforms, its new current HP becomes 108 plus the amount of HP it had left before transforming. Let's see an example of how to calculate it. For example, after the turn completes, this Zygarde only has 98 HP remaining. 108 plus 98 equals 206 HP, which as you can see is the exact amount of HP Zygarde has right now on the screen. Generally speaking, you would actually prefer to have less HP investment on Zygarde Complete for the purposes of being bulkier, but because the reasoning for that is related more to EV spread optimization and not so much mechanics based, I've decided to just include a paste bin where I go over it instead, which you can find in the description below. Number 9. The mechanics of Fainted Form Regression can be relevant in niche situations with Zygarde Complete and Round Timer at live VGC events. Fainted Form Regression is a relatively obscure and normally unimportant mechanic, where if a Pokemon undergoes a form change mid-battle and faints, it remains fainted as the form it started out in, its base form, if you will. For example, if you Mega Evolve Kangaskhan and it faints, it will remain fainted as regular Kangaskhan, not Mega Kangaskhan. I assume that this is put in place so you can't just continually revive your Megas in a run-through against the Elite Four or something. Again, normally this has no competitive implications at all, but for Zygarde, there is a relevant statistic that changes with its faints, and that's its overall HP. So tournaments at live events don't last forever. If a best of 3 set of Pokemon lasts 50 minutes, then special rules start applying to wrap things up. Once 50 minutes are up, players get 3 additional turns to wrap up the game, but after that, a series of tiebreakers are applied to determine who wins. The first tiebreaker is the number of Pokemon remaining. If you have 3 Pokemon and the opponent only has 2, then you win the game. However, suppose both you and your opponent have 2 Pokemon remaining. The next tiebreaker is overall percentage of HP, which is calculated by summing up all of the HP left on your team and dividing it by the sum total of all the HP on your team. For example, in this scenario, if my opponent and I were going to time, I would have 129 plus 213 HP remaining out of 200 plus 213 plus 214 plus 175 total HP, which is 342 over 802. And 342 divided by 802 equals 42.6% HP remaining. The reason this matters for Zygarde Complete is because it changes total HP when it faints. And that means you will have a smaller denominator for total HP, which as a result means you will have a greater total percent of HP with Zygarde fainted as Zygarde 50% rather than Zygarde Complete. Basically, Fainted Form Regression helps out the Zygarde player a little bit in these round timer scenarios. Number 10. The mechanics of Thousand Arrows. Thousand Arrows is a 90 base power ground type spread move that doesn't hit your partner. In addition, Thousand Arrows has the fantastic property of being able to hit Pokemon that are flying type or have Levitate, and after it hits them with Thousand Arrows, a smackdown effect is applied, so they basically lose their flying type and become grounded. When Thousand Arrows is used on a flying type with a secondary typing, it always deals neutral damage on the first hit. For example, when Thousand Arrows is used against Zapdos and Ledian here, you can see that it deals neutral damage to both Zapdos and Ledian on the first time. Afterwards though, Zapdos takes super effective damage from Thousand Arrows, and Ledian resists Thousand Arrows thanks to its bug typing. This doesn't apply to Pokemon with Levitate, so something like Bronzong would still take super effective damage on the first instance of Thousand Arrows. Thousand Arrows also has the ability to hit Pokemon in the middle of Skydrop. This means you can use Skydrop and hit the opponent on the same turn with Thousand Arrows, or hit an opposing Tapu Koko as it uses Skydrop on Zygarde's partner. Finally, unlike Earthquake, Thousand Arrows is not weakened by grassy terrain. In general, the only moves that grassy terrain weakens are Earthquake, Bulldoze, in magnitude, so Thousand Arrows still deals the full damage even if Tapu Bulu sets terrain. Number 11. The trapping effect of Thousand Waves only applies until Zygarde leaves the field. Thousand Waves is another one of Zygarde's signature spread ground-type attacks that applies a trapping effect on both opposing Pokemon, assuming the opponent isn't immune to the attack or it misses or anything like that. You can think of it like an offensive version of the move Block. However, this trap is lost as soon as Zygarde leaves the field, which includes both normal switching and fainting. For example, Zygarde can't maintain a trap on the opponent with something like a switch plus U-turn play with Thousand Waves, like you could with Shadow Tag. Number 12. Primal Reversion happens after all normal entrance ability activations occur. Normally, a great way to determine speed between two Pokemon is by paying attention to the order of entrance ability activations. For example, if Landorus T's Intimidate triggers before Tapu Koko's Electric Surge, then you can be confident that Landorus T is faster than Tapu Koko, in this case indicating a Choice Scarf Landorus. Primal Reversion, however, occurs after all of these effects have normally taken place. For example, suppose my Xerneas is sent out against the opposing Primal Groudon here. My Xerneas is at max speed, only hitting a 140 speed stat. Despite my Fairy Aura going first, that's no guarantee that I'm faster than the opposing Primal Groudon. As you can see, Groudon still moved first with Fire Punch, and that's because this Groudon is 252 speed with a Jolly nature. Of course, if Groudon has already Primal Reverted, then Desolate Land is just like any other entrance ability activation, and you can use it to determine speed, as you can see here. And of course, between Groudon and Kyogre themselves, the order in which they Primal Revert can be used to gauge speed tiers, which can be extremely important in managing the weather war between the two Hoenn legendaries. Number 13. Primal Weather does not block status moves that are water or fire type. For example, Tapu Fini can use Soak just fine while Desolate Land is up, despite being a water type attack. A similar thing would happen if you tried to use Will-O-Wisp with Primordial Sea up. You can still successfully use the attack and get the burn off. Only damaging attacks are blocked by Primal Weather. Number 14. Fire or water type Z moves will be blocked in the appropriate Primal Weather. For example, if I try to use Z Blue Flare with my Reshiram here to one-hit KO the opponent's Duskmane Necrozma in Primordial Sea, the attack will simply fizzle out. Neither Turbo Blaze nor my Z move is enough for Reshiram to break through. Although Z moves can be used to get around the effects of things like Encore and Disable, Primal Weather just isn't one of the things that Z moves can bypass. Number 15. An attack failing as a result of Primal Weather will double the base power of Stomping Tantrum. The most obvious example of this is if Groudon uses Fire Punch as Primal Kyogre switches in, where the resulting Primordial Sea will cause the Fire Punch to fizzle out. However, because Fire Punch failed to animate, that means Stomping Tantrum now has its base power doubled, which actually does a nice chunk of damage to Kyogre, threatening a knockout after some prior chip damage on most Kyogre. For Groudon, the base power of Stomping Tantrum can also be doubled in a number of other practical ways, including getting flinched, for example from Fake Out or by Rock Slide, taking a Sleep Turn, or if Precipice Blades double misses your opponent, or misses one target and the other target was Flying type or had Levitate, or anything of that sort. If you're curious about more cases where Stomping Tantrum receives doubled base power, Check the description for my Mechanics Monday video on the subject. Number 16. When you skill swap Primal Weather around, if the skill swap user swaps 2 different weathers, the skill swap user's weather is the one that will remain. This one is best demonstrated with an example. Let's say my Bronzong has skill swapped Primordial Sea away from my Kyogre. If Bronzong now skill swaps with the opposing Groudon, Primordial Sea will be the ability that persists in the end. The speed interaction between Bronzong and Groudon doesn't matter. It wouldn't matter if Groudon was faster or slower than Bronzong because it would still work the same way. This mechanic often came up in Weather Wars during VGC 2016, and it was incredibly important for managing whether or not Kyogre actually got to attack against Groudon or not. Number 17. Airlock and Cloud9 do not negate or remove weather on the field, only suppress it. For example, if I send out Rayquaza when my opponent has Primal Groudon, you can see that Desolate Land visually hasn't gone anywhere. While Airlock is active, Fire-type attacks will do normal damage, and Water-type attacks can be used again. However, if Rayquaza leaves the field because it fainted or switched out, then Desolate Land is active again immediately. The weather doesn't just get automatically removed or anything like that. Number 18. Speaking of Rayquaza, Rayquaza cannot Mega Evolve if it is holding a Z Crystal. Typically, Rayquaza just needs to know the move Dragon Ascent to Mega Evolve, which opens up the door to let it hold a different item like Focus Sash or Life Orb. However, if Rayquaza holds a Z Crystal, then you simply don't have the option to Mega Evolve in game, no matter what you try. It doesn't matter if you use your Z move with Rayquaza, or if another Pokemon uses a Z move instead, or anything like that. You still can't Mega Evolve Rayquaza if it holds a Z Crystal. Notably, this means if you see an opponent using something like Z Dragon Ascent, that means they are unable to Mega Evolve Rayquaza at all. And finally, number 19, Ditto's quirky interactions in VGC. Most players have a good idea of Ditto's basics. Imposter lets you transform into the opposing Pokemon as soon as Ditto switches in, which can be useful in a GS Cup metagame to get access to an opponent's big legendary Pokemon. Ditto transforms into whatever Pokemon is directly opposite to its current slot. For example, if you send out Ditto on your right side, it will always transform into the Pokemon on the opposing trainer's right side from your perspective. This means in an endgame scenario, where the opponent only has one Pokemon remaining, if you don't send in Ditto on the correct slot, you could miss out on a pivotal imposter. However, choosing the right slot isn't always possible due to a mechanic I call forced slot switching. For example, Groudon here got a double KO with Precipice Blades, and now I want to send in Ditto to hopefully clean up. However, Groudon is on the right side here, so I'll just send Ditto out on the right side, right? Wrong. The game forces your hand in this scenario, and you aren't given a choice where to send Ditto out, which means Imposter won't kick in. Remember how we saw that Primal Reversion takes place after normal entrance ability activations? Ditto provides a poignant example of this. If Ditto is sent out against some opposing Groudon, it will transform into the opposing Groudon before it Primal Reverts, leaving Ditto without access to Primal Groudon's buff stats. Imposter does not work on an opponent with Substitute, and that's because Transform in general does not work on a Substitute. Finally, if Ditto transforms into a Pokemon that can change forms mid-battle, for the majority of cases, it won't be able to actually undergo those form changes itself. This means that if Ditto transforms into a Power Construct Zygarde and gets hit below half of its health, Ditto won't undergo the form change to become Zygarde Complete. Of course, Ditto can transform into Zygarde Complete normally, once the opponent's Power Construct has triggered. And there you have it. Although several of these 19 mechanics won't be applicable to the Sun or Moon series of VGC 2019, I hope you at least enjoyed the video and can use this as a reference for whenever you need to brush up on your GS Cup mechanics. What was your favorite mechanic on the list? Do you have any additional questions about any of these mechanics I listed? Or do you have another mechanic that you'd like me to research and discuss? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, have a good one.